Very good afternoon to you, Neil. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Wilfred.
I want to talk, first of all, about Hong Kong and the way it's escalated of late. And my main question is this. Do you think this will remain Hong Kong specific, or could it really damage Beijing as well?
Well, I think many people, after the Beijing government decided not to send in external forces, rather took their eye off the crisis and failed to see that the protests were morphing into something that was not so much a million people in the street as hundreds of people fighting pitched battles with the police. What happened at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, an institution at which I've taught, this evening was nothing short of a full-scale battle. And so it is a problem for Beijing, as well as obviously being a problem for the Hong Kong government. And I think the most important thing, Wilfred, is actually the implications for somewhere else, namely Taiwan, because Taiwan is watching this closely with an election approaching in January, and it is radically changing sentiment towards the mainland in Taiwan. My view is that the real historical significance of the Hong Kong protests will be felt next year in Taiwan, where Beijing has a major problem. It is losing any kind of prospect of bringing Taiwan back into the fold, which is, of course, Xi Jinping's ultimate goal as president of the People's Republic of China.
But Neil, if we did see China respond to try and send in troops or seize control of Taiwan in any way against the democratic will of the people, will we not see America and its allies act in a way that it hasn't done on Hong Kong?
Well, you've got to remember a couple of things. The first is that the Hong Kong protesters have explicitly signaled their support for and sympathy for the United States by waving the stars and stripes in the streets of Hong Kong, which is a tremendous provocation to Beijing. Of course, the United States was never very likely to take action in Hong Kong other than of the form of speech making, and we've had some of that. But Taiwan is slightly different because under the 1979 legislation, the US government is committed to, although it's not exactly clear how, resist any attempt to change the status quo in Taiwan. Now, one can't be certain if there were a crisis in Taiwan what President Trump would do, because one can't be certain about almost anything President Trump would do. My concern, and it is a concern of the Taiwanese government, is that China is likely to ratchet up the pressure on Taiwan probably around about the time of the election in January. And if the result is one that Beijing doesn't like, who knows? One point that I made in connection with Remembrance Day, Veterans Day, is that you have to remember international agreements can lie dormant, almost forgotten, and then be triggered by a crisis. Britain went to war in 1914 over a treaty signed in 1839 about the neutrality of Belgium, which almost everybody in the general public had forgotten about if they'd ever known. I think the US commitment to Taiwan is a little like that. It's ambiguous. People in Congress certainly care about it, but the wider public has no clue. And I suspect President Trump himself doesn't feel very strongly. And that's the kind of uncertainty in international relations that can have huge implications. So my advice is keep an eye on Taiwan. As that election approaches, I think we are going to shift our attention away from Hong Kong to the much bigger question of Taiwan's future.